So welcome to our presentation on OpenAthens. Thank you for attending. My name is Denise Gehring. I'm the head of collections and technical services at Azusa Pacific University. I'll use the acronym APU. In addition to my role in collections and technical services, I'm also the librarian for graduate nursing, public health, and the English as a second language program. I've been at APU for 14 years, 12 years as a faculty member. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And then the next slide. APU is the Evangelical Christian University located in Azusa, California, with approximately 10,000 students. We have 3 libraries on the main campus and two libraries at regional centers in San Diego and Los Angeles. In addition to classes at the regional center locations, we offer online degrees in multiple fields. APU supports Los Angeles Pacific University, LAPU. This includes both the reference and library instruction, technical support for library resources, and access to library resources. We have 10 library faculty, which includes 9 subject librarians, 14 staff, and normally 80 student workers, but since we are still working remotely, we only have 2 at this point to help with interlibrary loans. One staff member, Frank Dubiz, is an IMT dedicated staff member. IMT stands for Information and Media Technology. He manages OpenAthens as well as other backend library systems and technology. We have approximately 127 resources selected in OpenAthens. Some resources include multiple electronic resource titles. I'll pass it on to Pam.
Hi, I'm Pam Childers. I am the Systems and Web Librarian at Indiana Wesleyan University, located in Marion, Indiana. We are a private Christian university, actually a Wesleyan university, with a little over 14,000 students. Our traditional campus is a little over 3,000. That's your traditional from 19 to 23 years of age living on campus. We also have over 8,000 adult and professional studies students, which are in the national and global. And those students are both on-site and online. We have regional campuses all out throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio. We also have a seminary here on campus. Beth, would you like to continue?
I'm Beth Jewell. I'm the Web Services Librarian at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. We're the flagship campus of the University of Arkansas system. We're a very large research-intensive university with arts and sciences degrees, as well as schools of engineering, architecture, law, and other professions. We have our main campus. We also have users all over the globe, including a study abroad campus in Rome, Italy, that has not been very active this past year. Prior to moving to OpenAthens, we used the WAM proxy for more than 20 years, so back to the days of Telnet. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Thank you. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what OpenAthens is, because I think we all have a jumble of acronyms and initialisms in our brains. OpenAthens, Shibboleth, SSO, SAML, federations, federated login. OpenAthens is a federation of institutions who have agreed to share a certain kind of standard for exchanging metadata about users so that they can be authenticated. It's also a solution, so it's a technological platform for those members of the Federation to authenticate one another's users. And those members can be libraries as well as publishers. Originally, OpenAthens was a federation based in the UK. It has since become a worldwide federation, including more than 2,600 libraries and institutions around the globe. Some of you may be familiar with another federation, in common, that serves the North American continent. So what does all that mean for you? OpenAthens provides that single sign-on experience that our users are used to from other campus services, such as our learning management system or our email systems or our office applications. It can be based against your campus identity provider, whether that's Microsoft Azure or Google, or there's probably other identity platforms that you could use. Or if you need to, you can also manually create and curate your patron list using delimited spreadsheets or data. So it offers options in terms of how you maintain that patron list. It works with hundreds of providers, publishers and platforms. And in addition to those providers that can deal with federated access, it offers a traditional proxy. So yes, just like WHAM, it can rewrite URLs in a proxied environment as well. Next slide, please. So why did we switch? We all made this decision separately, and I think we're all glad we made this decision. For many of us, for APU and UARC especially, the caching and cookie and clear your browser issues were pretty overwhelming at points in time during busy parts of the semester. It's frustrating for users and librarians alike. Also, WHAM has a pretty high maintenance overhead for the person maintaining it in your library. There's a forwarding table with all the domains to be proxied. Some vendors have as many as 20 domains that need to be proxied, and all of that needs to be maintained locally at the library level. In addition, for APU, they were maintaining 2 separate proxies for their 2 different institutions, so that was double the upkeep. And also for all those connections that need to be HTTPS now, which is most publishers, you would need to purchase a subject alternative name certificate, a SAN certificate with a wildcard for your library domain, for your CRO domain, which is not an insignificant expense, and not all certificate vendors, can supply a SAN certificate. IP-based authentication is increasingly problematic in the mobile world, where most of our users, especially in the last year, are not on campus. So why did we switch to OpenAthens away from WHAM? Well, to get that consistent login experience that students are used to, and faculty as well, so that they have the same login experience that they would have if they were logging into email or the campus LMS. And it's a standard interface that they've seen before. What's nice for OpenAthens is since it can support multiple identity providers, for instance, APU can offer, as you see in the lower part of the screen, log into APU's account or log into your LAPU account. So multiple institutions can share the OpenAthens access. It reduces the number of error messages our students see. They stay logged in longer because the federated access can last up to 24 hours. And all of that maintenance in the WHAM forwarding table is handled by OpenAthens. So no more 900 entries in your forwarding table. OpenAthens Central is going to maintain those connections to all of the users worldwide, all of the vendors. There's very robust reporting, and you can get pretty granular data based on what you're willing to send to OpenAthens in terms of attributes about your users. It's more secure. And then there's personalization for some of your users who may have folders on EBSCO or an account at ProQuest eBook Central to maintain their bookshelf. So just a quick overview of how these 2 technologies work. With a proxy server, you're using a rewritten URL to redirect traffic back through your Sierra server. And for many of us, the decision was to just pass through users who are on campus. If they're within a campus IP range, they just go automatically to the resource. If they're off campus, Sierra is going to ask them to verify based on whatever their credentials. Are they a current patron? Are they a correct patron type that is allowed remote access to resources? If so, they pass the test, they're forwarded on to the Science Direct or whatever the resource might be. Of course, they're being passed on with the IP address of your Sierra server, meaning that many people at the same time could be presenting that IP address to your resources. Next slide, please. With OpenAthens, you can choose, I think APU actually authenticates everyone, but I think Indiana Wesleyan and UARK both allow our on-campus users just to pass straight through, just as we did with the WAM proxy. So if they're on campus, they don't have to authenticate. Other users go through the OpenAthens. As you can see, it's a rewritten URL with a prefix instead of a rewritten 0- and a suffix. The user hits OpenAthens. OpenAthens sends an encoded message in SAML markup, the standardized XML markup, to our campus identity provider to say, is this person okay? Can you have them log in on your system? They log in on our UARK local system. UARK sends it back to OpenAthens another SAML message saying, yes, this person's okay. Here's the metadata about this person. OpenAthens says to the vendor, this person's okay. UARK vouch for them. Additional user attributes can be passed to the vendor if you want them to. Next slide, please. And another advantage, I think, of OpenAthens is so often we have users who start with Google Scholar or start somewhere else. They don't start with the library webpage. So they find something wonderful out on the wild web and they can't get access to it because it's not a proxied URL. So that can be very frustrating. With OpenAthens, so many vendors have a place on their site that says log in through your institution or log in through OpenAthens or log in through your organization. So the user has a chance to, while they're looking at that article without coming back to the library website, log in through OpenAthens. OpenAthens checks with your campus and then forwards the person on to the article they're looking at without having to make a round trip back to the library website. I think Pam's going to take over.
I want to talk about the implementation journey. And as you can see, all of our library steps were fairly consistent in implementing. For example, APU between August and March of 2018, they updated their operating systems from Red Hat 5 to Red Hat 7. And IWU, we had to roll ours back due to the link issues and a few other issues. So we were going to go live in February of 2019, and then we decided to roll back our go live to the end of April so that the regular semester students that were on campus were not here when we did the rollback. And then we had a cleanup through 2019 of the fall of 2019. You can see that Arkansas started testing in August of 2019 with their go live in January of 2020. So theirs was fairly quick, but I would recommend it's pretty much a year-long project with the work starting because there's just a lot of steps involved in this. So there are basic implementation phases for the OpenAthens project. One being the project kickoff, the authentication setup, the resource configuration and testing, promotion and training, the go live process, cleanup and tweaking, and new workflows and procedures. And so these are just basic to any OpenAthens implementation, be it University of Arkansas or Azusa Pacific or Indiana Wesleyan University. So the project kickoff usually begins with initial meetings with EBSCO. And EBSCO is the vendor for OA in the United States. And EBSCO assigns an implementation coordinator and a SAS engineer to your project. And the implementation coordinator will be your contact throughout this project. And I must say they were very, very helpful for us. It's also essential to involve the IT staff and your other partners as they will be working with you to get this coordination so that SSO works with OpenAthens. For example, University of Arkansas was to have had an initial kickoff meeting with several IT staff so they could coordinate the high level view of what OA is and does. At Indiana Wesleyan, we met with IT staff. To approve this, our security manager wanted to go through this and to talk with EBSCO, and so we did all of that. On the library side of things, you want to think about who will be working with your electronic resources, who will contact the vendors about IPs and access, the proxy server admin, the remote access troubleshooting, and of course, all those roles may be you, and in the case of IWU, it was me for the most part. And also don't forget your communicators and communication plans. So we've got all that going. The authentication setup is an interesting process. So in setting up authentication, you will have some choices based on the permission sets you want to define. Do you have the resources licensed only for one program and department? For instance, in the case of IWU, we have a specific database that are for graduate nursing students only. What statistics do you want to collect? Do you have any patrons with remote access not covered by the campus SSO? So you need to look at that. So you might have summer access programs, there's alumni access. And if so, you can create some user accounts on OpenAthens manually, which we did as well for one student who did not want to agree to the EBSCO agreement. So you need to decide what on-campus users will be automatically passed through to resources without authentication, and also what's the convenience versus security and statistics. And you may also want to set up an SSO account that can be used for testing. And we have our own special gal here at IWU that we use for testing. The next phase, resource configuration and testing. And this is the most complex step. It's a complex step and it's time consuming because you're identifying all your vendors and your platforms. You want to clarify your rights, your holdings, post cancellation access. University of Arkansas combined a number of reports and then deduped for a master list. That would be your WAM forwarding table domains, vendor records, serial solutions, reports, dedupe list of URL domains in the catalog. And then you report all this to EBSCO. In the case of Azusa Specific and Indiana Wesleyan, since we are both EBSCO A to Z publication finder customers and we use EDS, EBSCO did a lot of this for us. But there were other little considerations. It just depends on your university. So there's a wait while EBSCO contacts vendors and allocates resources for you. There's a great deal of back and forth of contacting to verify access and holdings, contacting new publishers to OpenAthens, and explaining the proxy process too. Another thing is testing. Testing, both on campus and off campus, multiple users, tracking issues on shared spreadsheet with EBSCO, verifying full text access, not just site access, and call to the entire library for guest testers. So there's a lot of testing going on with that. Promotion and training, the next piece of it. This is synchronous with other tasks, blog posts for users, communication with campus partners. We worked with IT, we talked with our LMS, LibGuides and FAQ updates, all of those things, and staff awareness, emails, testing, demos, and update sessions. We did work with LibGuides about getting our links changed. That sort of worked out, but not quite, but we did work a lot with SpringShare as well on getting things changed. Go live, not just a day, it's a process. So some of the things just cannot be done in advance. You have to have your go live providers and you have to know where all those links are. For example, EBSCO links, Gale links, and ProQuest links do not change until the day of go live. This is where your communication process is very important, and also your documentation as to where your links are, because there is a little lag time on your go live for that piece. Fortunately, WAM is still working, and so during that piece, WAM was working for us, and so we weren't completely down on the go live day. So we did have that piece working for us. So the last part is the go live day, and you really have to know where all of your ProQuest, EBSCO, and Gale links are, your A to Z databases, your eJournal text. You need to know all of this stuff. ProQuest will only allow one authentication type. So once you flip you cannot go back with ProQuest, so the WAM links won't work. For IBSCA, if you retain both IP and SSO authentication types, it can cause conflicts for your off-campus users. And so in our case, we have IP access for on-campus and SSO only for our off-campus. And we can talk a little bit about that. And we just have the advantage of having off-campus library services having a separate site. It's a little nerve-wracking, and as we said, it was Linkapalooza day for that. You are not finished with the go live day, of course, because you will be going through and Athenizing links. You will find little pockets of links here and there that somehow you missed. And of course, some user finds those links for you. And there are just so many places. The library catalog global update was great for that. You can use Mark Edit when you do new batch loads. I have a whole system set up in Mark Edit for the catalogers, and they just whip it through and then upload it. Or you can do global update after your records are uploaded in the catalog. Load profile updates, LibGuide and LibAnswers, your website, the campus CMS, and you need to alert faculty and students as to what's going on. You're going to have to possibly update your technical services workflows for the new setups, and you'll probably want to provide your users with tools for Athenizing links, which I have provided for faculty for courses for permalinks and the like. A lot of this involves clarifying staff roles, what's the new process, what's the new load profile, and the tools for Athenizing, encoding, and URL encoding and unencoding links. And now we'll go to lessons learned, and we'll go back to Denise.
Thank you. Some of the successes that we've had at APU include the first bullet, there are login statistics on the resource level. However, you can only compare up to 9 resources, groups, etc. at one time on screen. These can be downloaded to get the full list in Excel, but it'd be nice to have the option to compare with vendor sushi statistics. Second bullet is having a dedicated EBSCO rep was very nice. They did the setup for us and contacted vendors. We did have to respond to a few vendors because of their policies. Next bullet. Another success that we found very helpful is the option to create personal accounts for vendor testing, proctors, visiting scholars that may not have an APU email address. Next bullet. We have had no problems with OA being down. We are in the Pacific time zone, so mainly this is because of the time difference. And next bullet, we configured our own homemade resource in OA for Link Plus and Encore. This uses institutional email address as a key to make sure that there's a match to the III patron database. Next, we keep WAM as backup in case we are having problems with the OA resource. For instance, when they create a new resource instead of just updating it, or when a vendor changes their domain name. I'll discuss this more in challenges. The link full text option is available through WAM, but not OA, as we use it for this as well. In our A to Z database list, we have an easy SQL code switch if we need to change from OA to WAM. Resources in our new independent of the ILS, now independent of our ILS. If III goes down or if there is an upgrade, users still have access to research. Next bullet, we are no longer maintaining a double proxy access for LAPU that we maintained for 8 years. And we are spending less time handling proxy configurations. And finally, our biggest problem for an entire year that impacted patrons every day, there are no more cookie timeout errors for users. This was a huge issue. And then I'll go ahead and share our challenges. Juggling of multiple entities within APU, LAPU, and EBSCO from the beginning was a big deal. Working with EBSCO as a middleman, communication disconnect since we can't communicate directly with OA. When OA updates or replaces a resource script, EBSCO clients are not being informed proactively. We typically find out when a patron complains, and but we do maintain a log of all the changes run on API script weekly to compare these differences. This information does not trickle down into our resource library. On the one hand, it is nice to have a configuration taking place, but if it is not communicated with us that a new resource has been created, it is a little bit difficult on our end. It does work fine if they update it, but creating a new resource is the issue. EBSCO and OA are not testing the changes that they make. This is another issue that we are having. We provide them with a test login for them to communicate, but they still are not testing it. They just send it back to us and then expect us to test it, and it's still not working. And then any domain changes are updated on OA resource level. However, our A to Z database list is not changed, so we won't know until a patron has problems with it. In addition, it would be nice to be notified if a resource goes from a proxied resource to an OA SAML resource, because then we would update to that. Our legacy WAM is tied to the patron accounts. However, with OA, we can't do anything about that. For instance, a student has a fine, it won't read a block if there's a certain amount in fines, for instance. So there is continuity with patron types. So we are hoping in the next version of Sierra, this may be compatible with SAML. Next bullet, OA does not use FTE, but actual numbers of user accounts. So if alumni are added and continually increase, we may have to pay more for OA in the future. OA does allow you to make use of the OA registered account versus a local account. Registered accounts all have the word Azusa or some text to make them unique. For instance, azusa.drgaring as their username. That way you can go to the OA login page. You can log in with a registered user. The exploding robot. This is the Google Suite error message that LAP students encountered after we went live. This happens when students are logged into their personal account, maybe Gmail personal account, then try to access library resource through OA Wait, okay? And so we would like it to be able to give an option so that students select their university account. We wrote our own API to report on the permission sets since our institution has not provided us with any attributes at the beginning. It took our institution 1.5 years before we got attributes from APU, like students, faculty, staff, and adjuncts. We still do not have attributes for LAPU. There are options for usage tracking by groups, undergraduate, graduate, doctoral, that we had hoped to be able to do, but it is not possible since we can't get the attributes from our institution. And our last challenge, the accounts management tool is not complete. Functionality is not the same for all account types, like local authentication accounts versus personal accounts. Permission set allocation does not work for local accounts, and we can't update local accounts. In addition, the sorting feature for alphabetical order does not work with local accounts. And advanced search does not work for a local account. Positive outcome, OA is having a meeting where we can give feedback on the admin interface, which we have created a list, and my colleague Frank will be attending this to share our thoughts. And next, I'll share some future implementation ideas and other thoughts for improvement. So we would like to provide access to alumni automatically when the vendor allows or we have subscribed to alumni access. Attributes are not shared from our institution at this point. They have a problem with the definition of alumni. For instance, one class versus a degree. So they're still working those details out. We are considering using the account type access account, like a group account, where multiple people can use it. No email address is linked to it. Unfortunately, though, these accounts are limited to IP address only. Attribution integration for groups of users to track login statistics. We started to do this manually, but it was very time consuming, so we stopped. To get these assigned attributes from our institution would be helpful. We could separate by student groups like undergrad, doctoral, graduate, or based on department, nursing, biology, psychology, etc. Moving LAPU off of G Suite or fix the exploding robot so that they don't get that exploding robot. OA is laying the blame on Google. Google's laying the blame on OA. All they would need to do is to include a simple account chooser. There are other places on campus that could make use of OA when interacting with LAPU, like the Writing Center. So we look forward to working with those campus places. And then next, explore the option of using API call from OpenAthens to the Sierra system patron database to see if there's a block and apply it in OpenAthens. So we'd like to explore this for future iterations of Sierra, which will be IDP compatible. We can then pull in user attributes from Sierra rather than through the university. And this might fix our being able to collect statistics on different levels of students. And then lastly, the statistics feature needs some updating. We would love to see this updated as you can only select up to 9 resources groups on screen, but you can still download them, but we'd like to see more. So I'll pass this on to Pam from Indiana Wesleyan, and she will share her lessons learned.
Well, I'd like to start with the successes. And one of the things that was the best thing ever is that users are able to authenticate using our university login page, which is a single point of entry for all campus resources. And this was huge because in the past, students would log in to the portal to get to their class, to the LMS, they could get into their email and everything. But to get to library resources, they would have to go to WIM and they would have to authenticate again. So now once they're authenticated with everything. The thing I love is that the load is automatic. So the library doesn't have to load users into the OpenAthens system. And this has been a huge piece on our part, especially with our huge off-campus number of users that are off campus, because before with WIM, we would have to wait until a manual patron load was imported in or a person was manually entered if the load wasn't done or the systems librarian was on vacation. And so this is huge. So as soon as students are active members of the IWU campus, they have access to the databases. So that was a huge benefit for us. Links, we actually feel that ProQuest links work better, and the Gale and EBSCO links work without having to be Athenized. So if a faculty member wants to provide a permalink to say an article for their class, they just simply get it from the share link or the permalink from there. We worked with Gale. Gale permalinks weren't working correctly, and we spoke with Gale, and Gale said, okay, when your students get one of our share links, they will work. And Gale did it behind the scenes for us, so that worked really well. A big piece is that the redirector link generator is now available for all users that don't have admin access. When we first moved to OpenAthens, I had to do all of that because that link generator was part of the Athens admin system. And so now we are able to provide it to course writers and our instructional designers for courses and that work with faculty, and they are able to Athenize links for courses as needed. Some of the challenges that we've had is that users still have to authenticate in the Sierra OPAC for their My Library account, which gets very confusing for users. They can't just, we would like to have this seamless where they can request books or check renew books or do whatever, and they still have to go back into Sierra for their library account. The IWU identity provider doesn't have the same user groups as Sierra, so we can no longer cause blocked access. So we can't block access for people that have fines and stuff, and Denise went into that. Another challenge is that if users, and many of them do, in our national global section, that is actually taught by librarians to create EBSCO folders to save all of their resources for papers. And so we did go through a point where we had to merge old folders with the new folders, because the folder is now automatically created with OpenAthens and EBSCO. The same was for ProQuest, for eBook Central and things like that. We have had issues with IP and guest authentication causing problems with multiple campuses and locations. So we are fortunate enough to have a separate profile in EBSCO for our off-campus users, and this is EBSCO links only, so that they have their own website, and so all of their links are only SSO, where we can provide IP access on our campus link pages. This was really problematic when our distance learners were near other OpenAthens entities, and I hope OpenAthens fixes this, and EBSCO entities, and it would try to log them into the other school or place of business. Some of the vendors don't correctly encode the Athenized URLs. Ovid jumpstarts that we have a lot. We have a large nursing school with a graduate nursing program, and these jumpstart URLs are not correct, and we are constantly having to fix them, and faculty and students can't just save those links. And so that's kind of an issue for us. And just updating links in general in the catalog, the LMS and elsewhere. Our LMS was not simple to update. It had to be manually done course by course. So those were challenges that we faced here on campus. Some of the lessons that we learned: you need to be better prepared. So anybody that goes forward, be as prepared as you can, and if you think you have done enough, do 2 times more, because those links are a big part of moving from WAM to OpenAthens. Also check on how your vendors, how they provide permalinks and share links. Those were a big deal for us. I worked with multiple vendors to get them to Athenize share links for us, and they were very cooperative. When adding a new resource, check the catalog, the resource catalog in OpenAthens, to see if it already exists. If it isn't an existing resource in there, you can create it, but you can use WAM as a backup, because sometimes it takes a while to get set up, especially if the vendor that you are adding is not OpenAthens compliant, and they have to set up a proxy with that. So it can sometimes take a little while for things like that. Make sure to check with all your vendors that they have all of your campus IPs. It's a problem if the IP is in the OpenAthens admin as a campus IP, but the vendor does not have that IP in their admin, then they don't have access at all. They don't get the option, if you have IP in the URL, to actually log in or do anything like that. It's very strange, but just make sure that you test all those off-campus links, and make sure you have correctly input all IPs in the OA bypass authentication instructions. And I'm going to turn this over to Beth so she can talk about.
Well, Denise and Pam have made it very easy for me, because all I have to say is same. All of those and more were our experiences as well. I think a unique thing maybe for you, I would, if I was going to do this over again, please no, would be to not sell the name OpenAthens so much, because I think we tried to get out early and do a lot of publicity on this change for our users, but that led to some confusion about what is my OpenAthens account, or on the login screen, people would choose the OpenAthens login option instead of the sign in through UARC. And so I think it just made it worse, frankly. So I probably would sort of downplay the name of the service next time. And as both Denise and Pam mentioned, now that remote access to our databases and resources is separate from my library account, that makes troubleshooting for research services and for all of our people on chat and email support a little bit different, because there's two paths where we have to check with the user and say, when they couldn't log in, exactly what were they trying to do? Place a hold on something in the library catalog, or were they trying to get into JSTOR? So I think that is created some confusion, and I'm looking forward to what Innovative says may be some SAML support in an upcoming release of Sierra, to see if we could make it a truly single sign-on to both the catalog and OpenAthens. I too wish I had known more about what was going to happen on the Go Live day with those Go Live vendors, EBSCO and ProQuest especially, because they're so heavily used. And there were some complications with those personal accounts and folders that if I had been able to visualize it better, I might have been able to prepare better documentation for our users. And I will say, a pandemic is a great time to test off-campus access. So in that way, we did pick the right time to go live. Next slide, please. In our area for this presentation, you will find additional resources. We will put a couple of handouts on tips for searching and replacing URLs in your catalog to Athenize them, some links to some of the tools we created as staff guides for our own staff on troubleshooting, and helpful links that we have all used on our OpenAthens journey. Next slide, please. We want to say thank you for your time today, and we look forward to your questions and discussion after this video is over. Thank you so much.